Ricker. This is the Cosmology discussion group for October 19, 2025. And Roger Anderton is going to talk about Santilli telescope astrophotography and some of the results that he's obtained with photographs. So that kind of interesting to hear about that. Roger's talked about this before on the CMPS Saturday morning sessions.
So, okay, thank you. Thank you for letting me give this talk, and sorry about the problems. It's on a different laptop.
It's not, it's not, oh, there we go,
Yeah.
slideshow. Okay, good to go. All right, you can start.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. So I've got a new laptop here, and it's giving me problems. Uh, so hopefully,
Yesterday, okay, go on. I'll talk about that.
yeah. So
Go ahead.
I'm hoping that I don't get any more problems. So thank you for letting me do the talk. It's about concave lens astrophotography, and so it's an idea based on what Professor Santilli uh, has talked about with me, and it's using can use a telescope or just a camera with a telescopic lens on it. So I've been using now this what is called a Santilli telescope, and so I've been getting strange astrophotographs. And so the telescope setup consists of a normal telescope and what is called a Santilli telescope with a concave lens. And if you look at the picture here, you're supposed to have two cameras on the end of it. So you take a photograph with the normal telescope, then you take a photograph with the Santilli telescope, and you compare the photographs. So one of the problems is I don't have that much money, and so I'm only just using one camera at the moment. So ideally, I'd need to buy another camera and other expenses because it seems to take up a lot of memory. These photographs when you put it on the computer, so I'm having problems with keeping a record of all that. So it involves spending a lot more money, which is difficult when you've already got a lot of money going out on other things. Let's see. And so the basic idea is that sorry.
I just was commenting it's expensive living in Britain nowadays.
Well, yeah. And it's not freedom of speech anymore.
Right.
Yes. So you don't know what you're saying, which can put you into jail.
All right. I wanted to make a couple of points here. I'm not real clear about now. Does the telescope have a concave lens, what we call an objective? The first lens is usually called the objective lens, which
yeah,
is
the
usually
objective lens. I think the eyepiece you can put one on the eyepiece, but we have what I'm doing is not using an eyepiece and just putting the camera on it. So I'm swapping from the normal telescope to the what's called the Santilli telescope, and you're taking photographs one with the other, and then comparing them.
Right. So you can compare the photographs.
Yeah. So that's basically it, because most of astrophotography has been based on the normal convex lens, and so it's only used concave a little bit to adjust that convex lens image. So this is you really should have looked at things by comparing convex lens based telescope with a concave lens based telescope, but nobody seems to have done that before Santilli. So the basic idea, which comes from Professor Santilli, is that there are two types of light. There's ordinary light, which we are familiar with, and a second type of light, which is dual to ordinary light, which he calls iso-dual light. And I think you can get away with just saying it as dual light. So you've got two types of light, and they're both the same frequencies. So what our eyes are adapted to is dealing with ordinary light, and we're not really that used to dealing with the dual light. So what you're getting from the concave lens can be dual light, and so we're not used to dealing with that with our eyesight. And so the mainstream just seems to be dealing with ordinary light and has overlooked this dual light. So Professor Santilli became aware of it after he had a UFO encounter and he saw a UFO become invisible. And so that's why he came up with this theory that there's a second type of light. And so that's per this slide, it says this dual light is the same frequency as ordinary light, just if you don't normally see it. And I put a question mark because basically this is what the hypothesis are working under. And the problem is there's lots of questions that I don't have the answer to. And you can just making my educated sort of guess to what the answer is. So it seems to be what, based on what we're doing, is there's two types of light. And so with the dual light, it's focused by the concave lens instead of by the convex lens. So this is what
That's because, according to Santilli, the refractive index is inverse for the dual light to regular light.
Yeah, I was hoping to avoid all those complications because because if you're bringing in complications like that, it's sort of like messes up our understanding of gravity and everything else, sort of thing. It's this dual light is acting in a different way to what we're used to, so that's sort of what we could call an anti-gravity effect and so forth. And it's too complicated, and there's a lot more question marks which I would have. So basically, I'm trying to get away, avoiding the what I don't know. So with this convex lens telescope, which is shown at the top here, it focuses ordinary light onto the observer, and you can have what you call an eyepiece to adjust that a bit, but it does not focus ISO dual light. And so the ISO dual light diverges for convex lens, and ordinary light follows a certain geometry, and the ISO dual means it follows a different geometry. And I put down the definition of ISO dual down here to let you know it's a geometrical congruent property of mathematics we're talking about here. So this is the setup for the Santilli telescope. It's just the same, but you're using a concave lens, and the observer, you could use an eyepiece as well, but or a camera set up there, but I've been doing it with a camera without an eyepiece. So the concave lens does not focus ordinary light so well, and the geometry is the convex lens converges ordinary light, and the concave lens diverges ordinary light. So it's a different geometry, basically, what you got here. So this is the definitions of congruent, and I pulled it out. The word congruent means exactly equal in terms of shape and size, even when we turn, flip, or rotate the shape. So what you're dealing with, the ordinary light is one way. You can form a triangle if it's light's bending, and as it goes through a lens, that forms a sort of like triangle with the usual Pythagoras thing, but that the dual light is a different triangle formed, a congruent triangle. So it's the way I think about things is from Pythagoras mysticism, and based upon Pythagoras, the universe is mathematical. And I understand that the many dissidents are opposed to the idea of physics becoming mathematical, but really it is, as I see it, is the way that physics has been developed, that the universe is mathematical and it follows mathematical rules. And Pythagoras is, so say, the person who thought of that idea, and it's all to do, and this bit we were dealing with is all to do with triangles. You got the Pythagorean triangle and all that. So that's the basic idea, and I don't think that video link is going to work, so no, I might have to ignore that. But it's sort of like going back to this Pythagoras, it's sort of like the mainstream hasn't really latched so much onto the idea of looking into all the mathematical possibilities, and they sort of like overlook this property of geometry. When they're looking at light, they should have also considered the congruent issue of the mathematics. So it's all been missed out. So I don't know if I can get this video up. I clicked on it earlier and it seemed to work, but that was on my version of Zoom. Oh, it's going. So I think I've got to turn my sound off. Hold on a minute. It's going too fast for me. Can you see this? Or is it just
I see a white screen.
you see a white screen, you don't see the video?
No, there's a link.
Okay, so what I you hopefully see the next screen, and what happens is I go to a lot of physics conferences, and when you talk to the people who are into physics there, they start telling you lots of strange ideas. They're not all following the mainstream point of view. I went to one conference, and this person from, I think it was Israel, was telling me that radioactivity doesn't work in the same way that they tell you in the textbooks. And so you get lots of strange ideas turning up in these physics conferences, and they normally keep quiet about it and they don't make it too publicly known. So I came across this academic, which I'm going to call Dr. X, and he wants to be anonymous because of what the UFO connections would have to be with this concave lens thing. And he's investigated it for decades about taking photographs with a concave lens camera. And he doesn't want to have his reputation ruined, but he'd sort of like, if he retired, he would come out more about it. So I think that seems to be the problem I find at these physics conferences. They tell you things as an aside, which they don't want to put their name to. So this Dr. X, who's anonymous, is the main source of my information, who confirms much of what Dr. Santilli says. So what Santilli says is backed up by other people. And it's not just Dr. X, there's other people. And so Dr. X is using a Hasselblad camera with a concave lens, and he's saying that's the best camera for it. And he thinks that not all cameras work with a concave lens for this astrophotography. And it's something about electronics in some cameras filter the effect out, question mark. It's ideally, I would need to get a lot of different cameras and test them out and see which ones really work. So it's more expense, which I'm unfortunately not able to get involved in. But sort of Dr. X has found the best camera is the Hasselblad camera. So Professor Santilli is instead using a telescope with a concave lens. And so I don't really know much about anything except for this weird astrophotography pictures I'm getting. According to Dr. X, there is more to it than just two types of light. Because of the way that ordinary light behaves compared to dual light, you should also get other things like fractal light, etc. You know, if you know what fractals are, because light would not be just restricted to one straight line. It would be bouncing up and down funny if you're dealing with the full thing of dual light and ordinary light combined. It would be a fractal path that was being taken place. Anyway, putting aside that, the main publication which Professor Santilli has given is this one, which he published in the American Journal of Modern Physics. And he's pointing out the apparent detection via new telescopes with concave lens of otherwise invisible terrestrial entities, ITE, and he's calling UFOs ITEs. He's come up with this idea of his cataloguing of different types of things you see flying around in the sky, and he's called them invisible terrestrial entities because they're invisible to ordinary photography with an ordinary lens, and they're visible with the concave lens. So he's come up with this terminology of different types of invisible terrestrial entities. There's different types of these things flying around, and it's not just could find different types of UFOs flying around. It's when you're looking at the stars and so forth, the things look different out there. Comparing the two things, so the ordinary telescope versus the Santilli telescope, things just look weirder. Next, so this is sort of the reference he's given, and so Santilli has written quite a lot of stuff here, and he seems to have got other people involved in looking at the Santilli telescope, but he hasn't really got much traction with that. And he's come up with this idea of antimatter, which is different to how mainstream deals with matter. So you got Santilli antimatter, and that's a different thing to mainstream antimatter. So it gets complicated when you're getting into that sort of issue. But he's come up with this whole new system of mathematics, which he calls I showed dual numbers or something, and Geno numbers of dimensions 1, 2, 4, and 8. So he's come up with all this different mathematics, which I haven't gone into, which I haven't investigated. So that's a whole new separate issue. And so I've really just been looking at this problem of the different images you get with these different lenses. So what I got now is the what I got now is some of Santilli's images which he's published. So this is a view of what he calls an ITE1. That's an invisible terrestrial entity 1, taken in 3 consecutive pictures by a digital camera using the Santilli telescope. And he took that in 2015 in the night sky. And so he says, no, not only does it move slowly from photo to photo, but it also rotates. This particular type of motion excludes impurities in the telescope lens or in the camera as possible explanations. So this thing is so rotating in the sky. Next one he's got is, this is another ITE1, which he calls is taken and via the use of a pair of 150 Galileo and Santilli telescopes under a series of 3 burst rapid shots. The entity is clearly an ITE1 because it was in our terrestrial environment. So he's reckon it's not too far out in space. It's closer to home. It was only visible in the Santilli telescope. So you look in the ordinary telescope and you don't see this, but you see it with the Santilli telescope. And it produced a dark image on the background of the digital camera. Note that this energy too not only moves with respect to an image caused by an impurity in the telescope lens, so there's a dot there which is the impurity, it also rotates, so the things rotating. These are more images which he's come up with, and so the view in the top intervisible terrestrial entity of the second kind, and it was taken September in 2015 in the night sky. And what's he say about that? It's in our terrestrial environment, so it's in terrestrial sky. It's only visible using the Santilli telescope. So you see this with the Santilli telescope and not the ordinary telescope. And so he comes up with these more images, which he detective. The entity is also invisible to the naked eye and to the ordinary telescope, which he calls the Galileo telescope, but fully detected via the Santilli telescope. So you've got these things which are normally invisible to us moving around in the sky. And I think there's supposed to be a lot of them up there. There's a lot of things, strange things you see up there now when you're using this Santilli telescope. And this one seems to be talking about, this is sort of like a UFO, what he called a mothership, and it's dropping probes or something from it as it's going along. So this is kind of weird as well, but people try to come up with different explanations for these things. So what I've come across in my travels is this, if you may not be aware of, is that the thousands of stars are disappearing in the sky. And so people have been looking at these old photographs of the night sky, and the stars which are shown up in these old photographs, if you compare them with photographs taken now, uh, uh, those stars are not there anymore. So stars are disappearing, and I've got a video of it, unfortunately, which is not going to work. So this is a video on the internet by a person who's looking at the idea that hundreds of stars mysteriously vanished in the Milky Way, and he's offering what he thinks the explanation, but I don't agree with him. He comes up with the possibility that, well, he's trying to dismiss it as unimportant, but it does offer the extraordinary explanation that it's aliens. And so if you go by the mainstream, they've come up with this idea from a physicist called Dyson, and it's called a Dyson sphere. And what you do is, if your alien civilization is sufficiently advanced, you can build a structure around your star. And what you're doing is you're collecting that light energy and you're using it as a power source and so forth. And so when you build a big structure around your star, the star when you build this big structure around the star sort of like effectively vanishes because it's not then emitting light. So if you're taking a photograph of this thing before they build this Dyson sphere, you would see the star. But if you take the photograph afterwards, the star has vanished. So the evidence is that these stars are vanishing. And so it indicates that there's alien civilizations out there building these Dyson spheres. And other explanations, they don't really like that. The mainstream doesn't really like that explanation. So they're trying to come up with a different explanation, and they're talking about in terms of black holes. So these stars maybe vanish because they're turning into black holes and so forth. But I think with this idea that what he says, well, if it was that they were building these Dyson spheres, then you would still actually see it in the infrared, even though it'd be disappeared in the visible light. But from my point of view, I think they misunderstand the real nature of light. You've got the ordinary light and dual light. So when they built these Dyson spheres, that they're not only visible probably in the dual light and not the ordinary light. So they would block infrared and so forth. So I think this is highlighting to us that we've misunderstood completely everything we've been observing in the night sky. So this is my comment. And so of course I go for the alien megastructure idea. And it's a question mark whether you want to go with that idea. And the idea from that would be there are lots of aliens out there building megastructures, and because of our science stroke physics is not right, they go invisible to us by our techniques, usually using ordinary light means. Anyway, I've been able to get some photographs of the night sky. So when you go back to the days of Galileo, when he was making his astronomical observations, it was a case of there are other worlds out there than the Earth, and there could be aliens out there. And now it's a case of there are things out there invisible, and it must be aliens doing that, question mark. So when Galileo was around, it was a problem of, oh, look in my telescope. He said it to the authorities, and you can see these strange things in the night sky. And the authorities were saying, no, it's just a fault with your telescope. It's just not working properly. It's just creating an illusion. So this idea that there's lots of other things out there which are invisible to us by ordinary light, that kind of hits the same sort of problem, that people can be skeptical. And there's quite a lot of skeptical things being said on the internet about this thing about stars disappearing. So this is not my photograph, but this is my friend's Dr. X, and this is what I think is one of what these megastructure things look like better, and it's a sort of like triangle thing, and you can't only see it with the concave lens. So I think maybe that's an alien megastructure. So basically, we've got everything wrong in our understanding of like gravity, etc. So now I'm onto my pictures, and this is the sort of thing I'm getting. I'm getting these strange things in the sky, and ideally, I would need to take photographs with the ordinary lens compared to the concave lens, and compare the two photographs. But I'm having trouble doing that, setting things up. So this is another photograph. It's sort of like a wiggly thing. Another wiggly thing. And loads of other weird stuff. And there's more wiggly things. So basically, if you want to accept this things as being no ordinary explanation, then there's presumably lots of weird things flying around in the sky which are normally invisible. So mainstream just keeps sweeping certain things under the carpet, and that's what's called confirmation bias. Tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms and supports one's prior beliefs and exclude other information. So the mainstream is locked into their explanation of light, which is all with their ordinary light, and they've not been aware of this other possibility. That's basically finished the end. Thank you. Open now for questions. If I can stop share.
Okay. Well, Roger, my first comment is what kind of a camera did you use?
Yeah, it's the one that Santilli suggested that he was using. It from Dr. X. The best camera is the Hasselblad camera, and the one I'm
Okay,
using
well,
is the
let's back
Canon.
up. What kind of a lens did you use?
We're not using a lens. It's just using the uh, concave lens from what you call the objective lens. So you got
Okay,
focus
where
on.
is that coming from?
Sorry.
Where do you get this concave lens?
Concave lens. That's what Santilli
Yeah,
gave me.
who makes the concave lens?
Well, Santilli gave me this telescope with a concave lens in it, and
Okay, so Santilli provided the telescope,
yeah,
the lens.
yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't understand that. Okay.
Sorry,
So, and my
I've also taken photographs, and I've forgotten what camera it is now, but you can use a tau converter, and that is a concave lens you can put onto an ordinary camera, and you can take photographs.
correct.
And that gives these strange images up there as well. Normally, the concave lens would just be used to adjust the light which we get, which would be normally focused a bit by the convex lens. So, but just doing it with the concave lens, and you're getting these strange photographs.
Right. I have to comment on this. A lot of what you're showing me looks like dirt on the lens that's out of focus. So when I set up my telescope and I go to look at the moon or a bright star, if it's out of focus, you get these strange looking things that resemble the photographs that you've shown, and they're like dirt on the lens.
Yeah, it's taking loads of photographs, and it's not on. These images are not on the set, always on the same. Not always on there. So you take those photographs. Then what is on one photograph and not on another one. And I've tried to be careful about keeping the lens clear. But as you know, from one of Santilli's photographs, he did notice there was dirt on it. but you still had this other
Well,
image.
that's obviously one of the criticisms that people would
Yeah,
level against.
yeah. I think
Have you
that's
tried projecting the image, onto a white sheet or something like that to see if it's actually a real image?
no, it's difficult
I
to.
think that what the issue here is that when he says the Hasselblad camera is the best camera, I
Yeah,
think he means the sensor in the camera.
sorry.
Okay, the different cameras have different CCD sensors. This is not using film, it's using CCD sensors, correct?
Yeah, so the electronics is different. So you need to check with these different cameras because you think these the way that it's wired up normally it's reversed polarity or something. So you don't get the same thing with every camera, with every digital camera.
Right, and the different CCCs have different spectral responses
Yeah, yeah.
um,
But that's
and
not something I can look into with my budget. It's
well, you're talking about
When you
using.
say it's the best camera, it
hmm
might be merely the best camera for producing this effect, which there's a very big question mark about.
Yeah,
I mean, in the old days of optical film cameras, one said the Hasselblad camera was the Rolls Royce. It had the best optics. That
yeah,
was just a known phenomenon. But we don't know that for this, it's actually the best camera for producing what you're actually seeing. It
yeah,
might be the best camera for producing this effect, but there's a big question mark about this effect, as
yeah.
I was
And
saying.
Okay, we got one minute.
okay, on the issue of the mainstream, they've been taking, been looking back in their archives of these stars they've been taking photographs of, and modern photographs are sort of like they haven't, uh, that those stars are not on there. And one of the explanations is that they try to say it's dust. So they were taking photographs for dust back 30, 40 years ago when they were taking these star maps. So they are trying to explain it away. But I'm going for the more extraordinary explanation that it's aliens.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna get cut off here. We can discuss this further.
Yeah, okay.
We probably got a 30 seconds or so.
Okay, best pick it up
Um,
later. Okay.
okay, so there's a lot of myriad questions that you.
I
Okay,
so I
um,
if I can continue. So ideally it would need a lot of money for a proper research project where you would go to the desert for a clear night sky and you had several telescopes set up and you'd be taking photographs and seeing what any differences are so you could exclude the possibility of dust and so forth.
right.
Harry mentioned something about the refractive index, which I think you rather dismissed, Roger. But what was the point when you said reciprocal? What do you mean? You just
Well,
one over the normal
well
refractive index, and also what does it apply to?
in Santilli's theory, this dual light is going faster than light speed c. It's congruent also in that sort of respect as well. In ordinary light, you've got this light speed c, and it's you're having the refractive index based upon that. But this is sort of a refractive index based upon the speed of the dual light being faster than c.
And presumably you're speeding up the light when you put it through this lens.
Oh,
Is
I'm
that
not
the
sure
idea?
about that. You mean the concave?
Well, if the convex is slowing it down,
Yeah.
um, the refractive index is the ratio of the
Well,
two speeds.
you're talking about
In
the
this case,
dual
it's,
light. The
yeah.
dual light is acting different to the ordinary light, so
So
it's
you're saying it's ab initio going faster than the normal vacuum speed of light,
yeah.
and then presumably as it enters this lens, it speeds up.
Would
Is
it?
that what you mean by reciprocal?
I'm not sure about that. That's a question mark. I don't know. I
Well,
know when with ordinary light, it slows down when you enter a lens because of refractive index. And what the dual light is doing, I'm not sure. It's just doing the mathematical congruent to ordinary light. Ideally, back in the days of Galileo, they should have experimented a lot more with these different lenses and said, well, some lenses give different images to uh, your telescope, Mr. Galileo, and so forth. But that doesn't seem to be done. And so I brought this issue up with Dr. X, my academic, and he says, if you try going to, say, NASA or somewhere, trying to tell them to try to do things with a concave lens instead of the normal way you're doing it, they'd just dismiss you as being mad.
Well, yeah, that's the usual approach.
You wouldn't get traction from the mainstream because of confirmation bias. They're already firmly locked into this idea of the ordinary light, and this dual light would be the complete opposite to what they're normally dealing with.
Well, it's not clear to me what exactly what is meant by isodual, and that
but there's a definition of isodual. Santilli took that term there is a definition for it out there already in the dictionary.
Well, iso means same and dual means two.
Yeah, dual means you've got ordinary light and you got a second light, so it's a dual light to ordinary light.
Right. That in and of itself is kind of like something that people probably don't want to accept.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, they're used to light behaving in a certain way, and that's what we now calling ordinary light. And you've got this second type of light which they're not familiar with, and they haven't invested.
His theory is that this second type of light or dual light is created by a different type of atomic action, or it's created by some kind of annihilation of a different type of antimatter. Is that
ordinary light is based upon matter as we normally understand it, and so he's come up with it. This other light must be caused by antimatter, but it can't be the same as what the mainstream means by antimatter, because what he means by antimatter has negative mass, and what the mainstream now have done their antimatter test, and they decided that antimatter has positive mass. So the mainstream have overlooked this as well. For Santilli is right, that there's different types of antimatter.
Okay. Now, does Dr. X subscribe to the Santilli theory about antimatter, or does
I've not gone into the theorizing so much. Dr. X has his own ideas. It's just he's confirming that there's these strange photographs you can take with concave lens.
Okay, so he's not really subscribing to the entire theory of Santilli.
I think it's like me that I haven't looked at the theory. I've only looked at this problem of taking photographs. So I'm just trying to recreate the photograph.
So that's more of the conformational aspect of the theory. In other words, photographs are viewed as a kind of a way of proving that the theory is correct.
Yeah,
because you can detect these objects that the theory predicts exist.
Well, it's kind of like an observation, really, with Santilli, because his observation is this UFO disappear and becoming invisible. And so based on that observations, he's come up with this theory, and then he's come up with these observations you can make with a Santilli telescope. So really, it's all outside the mainstream, because if you look into the mainstream, they don't really like mention of the aliens being here. They're happy with the idea that aliens are out there in the far distant reaches of outer space, but they don't like the idea that aliens are just flying around here. And you're a crank then if you want to bring that idea up.
Well, yeah. Sorry,
hence,
but
hence,
yeah,
hence why Dr. X wants to be anonymous. He doesn't want to.
right. Well, yeah.
He doesn't want to get speared with this alien sort of stuff. He doesn't. His reputation. You don't want his reputation to be ruined while he's earning. And so I think if he retires, then he doesn't have to bother about his reputation anymore. Then he can come out about it.
But there's lots and lots of talk about flying saucers. Flying saucers have been talked about since after World War II, which kind of, I think, excuse me. I mean, this is a phenomenon that appeared after World War II,
Well,
presumably.
if you look into it, there were strange things in the sky before World War II, and
Well, that's
during World War II, there was things called Foo Fighters, which pilots were reporting saying, and before uh, going back even early in history, you had people in what are called legends and myths reporting, or folklore, they're reporting strange things in the sky and so forth. So it's been an ongoing thing where these observations are being made, but or so say made, which the mainstream kind of like wants to dismiss. If you look in the history of science, it used to be thought that stones falling from the sky with as what we now call meteorites, that was nonsense. When they had rationalisms take over with the Enlightenment, they think these peasants who were reporting stones falling from the sky, they were just mad. So the mainstream has really had a confirmation bias where they try to dismiss things as much as possible.
There's no doubt that that's true.
Yeah.
The mainstream have this bias. On the other hand, if you look at Santilli, he seems to have made up his mind that there was something. I mean, he was looking for UFOs in the first place, and then
Because
he
he saw
felt
one.
the strange effect of it disappearing or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, normally one would try to explain a phenomenon like that in terms of normal experience, what we know normally
Yeah.
through our own experience or science. But he didn't. He perhaps has jumped to conclusions, and he's formulated this whole theory to substantiate his initial bias. So I suppose what I'm saying is the mainstream indeed have a bias, not to engage in these things
Yeah.
at
Well,
all.
I think
But he seems to have the opposite bias, wanting to
well,
establish.
his observation was that he saw a craft up there which became invisible, and so he was trying to come up with an explanation as to why it became invisible.
And he was looking at a UFO, according to him, in the first
Yeah,
place.
and he believed it to be a craft, and it became invisible. So he was trying to come up with an explanation for that. You
well,
got sorry.
that's easily explained in mainstream. They just say, well, it was a satellite that went into the shadow with the
Yeah,
Earth.
this is a long time before there was many satellites. Today, when you're taking things, there's a lot more satellites up there, so it's much more difficult to say what is what anymore.
Right.
But
Well,
before the space age, it was easier to just look and see something weird up there and think, oh, it's aliens.
well, I'm still puzzled. I'm still interested that this business about UFOs only starts after World War II, and really becomes something that gets a lot of publicity. Um,
Yeah,
why is that? Is that because of the technology has uh, gotten to the point where these, as I recall, the early observations were that they detected things on radar and then they sent planes up to see what they were and they weren't there and that sort of thing. I'm not really that familiar with this, but
well, if you're not going by the mainstream version of history, there's an alternative history view out there, and the Nazis were in contact with aliens.
oh my gosh.
And so that is one of the points of view out there, and I've looked into that, of course, and you got the V1 and the V2 sort of thing. You got the rocket technology, and the what became the drone? Was it the a jet powered flying bomb thing? So
A1.
suddenly Germany had this amazing jump forward in technology, and people would say, "Oh, well, that was it. They were getting that information from the aliens." But the Nazis were also trying to develop UFO technology using anti-gravity and so forth. It's just they got beaten before they could roll that out. They were supposed to come up with delta wing jet planes and things like that, and that was supposed to be what America took over from Germany in their Project Paperclip when they took over German scientists like von Braun and all that. They were supposed to then getting all this technology that they were going to keep secret, and it was supposed to come from the aliens.
Interestingly enough, it is said that von Braun seemed to be obviously a very rational scientist. He said, "Oh yes, I admit we got help from outside
Yeah,
in
the
sending men
aliens.
to the moon."
Aliens. So there's a point of view that these people were saying, "Oh yeah, yeah, we got this from the aliens," and I think von Braun is one of the people saying that. What
Yeah,
hinting
that
at
could
that?
be just to mislead people. You know?
Yeah, it could be a spoke screen, but so like Germany was the most. You look into it. I think it was Feynman who was Germany was. You said something about Germany was the most technologically advanced place at the time in that time of the 1930s and so forth of the world sort of thing. So it had the best scientists, engineers, and so forth. So they were in a position to develop that sort of thing. And sort of like,
Well, there's a lot of YouTube channels that
yeah,
like to, point out about how the Germans were sort of mystified by the fact that the Allies had all of this advanced technology that they thought couldn't exist. And
yeah,
if you go on YouTube, there's the primary one is the proximity fuse, which supposedly the Germans had looked into and couldn't figure out how to do it and decided that it was impossible to do. And then when it showed up on the battlefield, the Germans were quite stunned. They'd been scooped technologically, and there's lots of instances of this happening. World
yeah,
War II.
yeah. So one of the things, the stories they come up with about the atom bombs, the Germans did have the atom bomb, just were too late to use it, and that was then stolen by the Americans and used on dropping on Japan and so forth. So you've got all these different stories of the so-called alternative history, uh, which is contrary to what the mainstream tells you. And
Okay,
if you
well, we're getting kind of away from
yeah,
the um, uh, now there's this new telescope called the Rubin telescope. Have you heard about this?
no, I haven't been looking into what the mainstream is saying.
Well, the telescope's named after Vera Rubin,
Mm-hmm.
who is a woman that because the Vera Rubin is a woman, she gets most of the credit for discovering the missing mass, um, the rotation curves, and the missing mass. She's associated with that, and
Yeah,
she's basically because she's a woman, they've sort of tried to basically claim that she single-handedly did this. Got to be careful about this. Um, she They named this telescope that's in South America after her.
mm-hmm.
Now, the telescope is supposed to be a sky survey telescope. This thing's huge. And it's the idea is that it's going to do a survey, but it does a survey once every couple of days or something like this of the entire sky. So it makes these photographs, and it just photographs a second, goes through, makes a photograph, moves, makes a photograph, moves, makes a photograph. So they're saying that they're going to have a complete picture of the night sky, and everything that's changing they should be able to detect. So they're claiming that any asteroids or anything, so they claim they've discovered all these thousands of asteroids because they've got this comprehensive picture of the night sky. So we should know if there are any stars that are disappearing.
Yeah.
by this telescope. This telescope should be able to tell us things like that. I
Great.
mean, here's a star that's gone now. That
I
should
don't know.
become kind of obvious.
Yeah. And so that's where they're at the moment. They've got these mysteries which they're still looking at.
Well, I'm kind of skeptical about this thing that stars disappear. Because it's well known that stars vary in their brightness.
Yeah.
By significant amounts. I mean, obviously that was controversial 100 years ago, or more than 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Because Aristotle said, well, the universe is immutable. They like to point to that.
Yeah.
But so stars come, you get nova, and a star is there, and then maybe it's not a nova later. I'm not sure what is meant by the stars disappearing. I'm not sure what.
Well, if it's nova, that's not. I don't think that's quite the same thing. That's an exploding star, so they can see that. It's when the star stops emitting light that it sort of like disappears. But
I don't know what that means. I mean, I don't know what that means.
When they stop seeing the light from the star, when there's nothing there, suddenly the star disappears.
I mean, I would think it kind of upsetting if Sirius would disappear, but I don't know that anybody's reported that happening.
No, they wouldn't. I don't think that's a.
I mean, I don't know of any bright stars that have disappeared.
Yeah.
Would be a naked eye star.
Yeah, Sirius is quite near us, isn't it? In terms of light years and that and so forth.
Well, it's the brightest star in the sky.
Yeah.
So
if that suddenly disappeared, we'd notice.
Yeah, but there's a lot of catalogs of all the stars, and
yeah,
I don't know that anybody has reported any naked eye stars that existed that the Greeks knew about or the ancient Egyptians have disappeared.
No, they haven't got. Not as far as I know. It's just, but there's lots of these stars up there.
Well, so the bottom line is that stars that have disappeared have to be, can't be a lot of them. I mean, can't be a lot of them. That would be my thought.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know how many numbers. I think when I saw one talk on it, was talking about hundreds that disappeared from.
Yeah, but hundreds out of how many billions?
Yeah, well, talking about the photographs that they had photographs decades ago, and they sort of like take photographs now, and 100 of those stars have sort of like disappeared.
Well, a lot of these old photographs might have had things like comets in them, which they mistook for stars.
Yeah. So
yeah, that could be. The reason I brought up this Vera Rubin telescope is that presumably would resolve a lot of this over a period of time, presumably.
Yeah.
And so this is a long-term project.
There was something like a Brookings report that said don't reveal anything about aliens.
Well, I think we got enough aliens already around us.
I know, but it's sort of more. There was supposed to be a report these scientists made, and they decided not to make it publicly known if they found definitive proof.
Yeah, well, there supposedly was some controversy about when Trump came into office that they were going to, they were going to release all this information about UFOs and this sort of thing.
And
it really didn't come to anything.
And it's disappeared like the Epstein files.
I don't know.
They said, "Oh, we reveal the Epstein file," and afterwards they said, "No, they don't exist." And things disappear. Whee!
And so I don't know what to think about it.
On the UFO front, they sort of like say, "Oh, these moon landings could have been hoaxed," and so they say, "Oh, let's look at the original film of the moon landings. We can check with that," and that's disappeared.
Yeah. Okay.
So it all disappears when you try to find it. It disappears. It disappears like those stars. You look at the stars; they disappear. Everything disappears when you got aliens.
I'm kind of.
Ever seen that?
Curious.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
You ever seen that TV series Invaders?
Yeah, that was in the
aliens.
60s.
When the poor paranoid hero gets proof that aliens exist, like physical proof. Well, like if you got a dead alien, it just disappears. It sort of like teleports away,
Right.
disintegrates. If you get a bit of their technology, like a gun, that just does the same. So the evidence just disappears. He knows the aliens are there, but the physical evidence, he can't get it because it just
Right.
disintegrates. You see
Okay,
that?
I'm kind of curious as to what Vladimir has to say about this because he
Yeah.
seems to know something about light.
Yeah. Okay.
Experimentalist, I want a confirmation, I want to prove, I want to see experiments when moving these lenses, because to put instead of one lens another one, who told you that it will be the right combination? No, I'm not satisfied. I have no idea. I have no opinion about what we are talking about today. Man, I'm an optical guy by education. That's why for me it's very difficult to imagine all these snakes on a camera. I don't know, man.
I thought that's what you were going to say.
Well,
No,
I'm happy going by the text, and unfortunately, there's nothing about concave lens astrophotography which I could find. There's nothing
there are so named parasitic effects,
So
parasitic imaginations, satellites, components of light. I know so many different issues, but not as magic like today you talked about.
magic.
That's magic.
Well,
And
that's the Pythagorean way of doing physics. It's sometimes said to be magic. It's
and the next
Pythagorean
point, very
mysticism.
important one. If somebody wants to prove something, suppose that we are for something like this, of course they will find some proof of them. That's it, simple like this. People are very excited about their idea, and this is a result of the idea. Oh, there is some alien, something extra, something, and so on. So, oh, this is a confirmation. It's absolutely wrong way to go. The right way to go, first of all, experiment and then try to explain it. Not trying to explain your idea. It came from sky, from nothing. I don't know, man.
But I pointed out that the problem is if you want to do this thing really properly, you need to get a lot more money, and which means research funding to actually go out and do it with a lot of telescopes in, say, the desert to get good sky conditions. If you wanted to do a project, because it's funding and as I point out, it's confirmation bias. The mainstream has already got this prejudice against this sort of idea. So they think it'd be a waste of money to even fund the project to investigate it properly.
Yeah, well, the irony there is they waste a lot of money on other projects. So
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure that's really an
I mean,
explanation.
because you look at when they did the neutrinos, when they thought, oh, the neutrinos going faster than the speed of light, which was back in 2005.
Oh, yeah, it's
They said, well, the way to go would be to check that with another experiment, and they just dismissed that and said, no, we don't want to waste money on another experiment. The experiment you've done with the neutrinos going faster than the speed of light was done wrong. There's no point wasting money by checking it. So the mainstream is prejudiced. They talk about saving money, that they've already got preconceived ideas, and in order to do research, you need a lot of money. Basically, more than I got. It costs 100. So you need to fund something, and then they they don't want to put the money into something they think is a waste of time. So you're tied into a vicious circle. We want proof, and we're not going to give you money to provide the proof, and so on. So because we think it's a waste of money. So it's all the mainstream is prejudiced.
It seems to me that another Santilli telescope costs not so much, because what I saw the pictures, there is no money behind of it. That's why it's so, man, you don't need to have a Vera Rubin, telescope to have the same results like Santilli he had. That's why, if you have this telescope, maybe a little bit different one, and that's it, simple like this. It's not a money issue, it's magic.
No, I just don't follow. Yeah, it is a money issue if you want to check out the images of different telescopes and different cameras. It would be you need to fund that sort of thing.
Okay.
Well, I think it's interesting that people are messing around with this. Obviously, whoever Professor X is done some messing around, but he doesn't seem to have really produced any real results that I could see, other than some funny photographs.
Well, that's basically what it is. Funny photographs. So, if you want to put money into doing the proper research, then that would be a problem with the mainstream not want to believe this sort of thing.
Yeah.
But you certainly need somebody to stick his head above the parapet. I
And have
mean,
it chopped
Dr.
off.
Rex, with all due respect to him, I don't know, but if he's afraid to express his views, and
Yeah.
you're not going
But
to get any.
I haven't been in the scientific community, but I've been in engineering, and I've learnt from my many years of experience as don't put your head up because you get it chopped off. You've seen what happens to other people; they get their heads chopped off. So you learn to keep your head down. You don't want to come out and upset people who are the bosses, and then they sack you, and then that's your income gone. And that's the way things have been set up at the moment. Dr. X doesn't want his reputation ruined by this, and it would be he retired, and he needs to retire, then come out with it, because then he's not got the income from his reputation. And then when his reputation, when he puts his head up, they would just slag it off, and they say he's just gone mad. I've seen so many other examples of people sort of like doing that they put their head up after they've secured their money. They just get dismissed as mad.
There are a few
Gone
exceptions.
crazy.
I mean, Professor Hallam Butayeb might be one of them. He's an established academic. He's probably a middle-aged man. He got a career and so on. But he's actually putting his head above the parapet. Now, he's doing it in what I would say is a diplomatic way. He's not going out, with all rockets blazing and insulting people and so on. He's
Yeah.
sort of leading them along, and maybe even confusing them a bit that they don't realize how radical his opposition is. But then finally he brings them along. So, you need that. You need some pioneers, some Galileos, if you like, to change.
Yeah. Modern day. I don't know about that one, but the one I've been following was this astronomer Avi Loeb, and he's from Harvard, I think it was, and he's come up with all these strange things, and I think must have tapped into an alternative funding from people who believe in aliens, because I think the mainstream probably wouldn't want to fund him anymore. So it's always a question of funding. Your income, you've got to live, and you've got to put food on the table, buy a house, and so forth. And so, sort of like the way society is set up is sort of like prejudice against things that rock the boat too much. I mean, Galileo found it, didn't he? Galileo, when as a classic example, he thought he was secure, and he wasn't. They suddenly put the Inquisition onto him. He thought he was immune. He thought he was friends with the Pope. Oh, we'll be all right now. And he came out of it all, and the Pope set the Inquisition on him. So when these people think they can suddenly start saying things, and they suddenly get a surprise that they run into trouble.
Well, the Pope died. The Pope that his buddy died, and
Yeah.
a new came along, and that was kind of an issue there. But even the Pope that he considered to be his buddy wasn't 100% convinced, I don't think.
Yeah.
That's kind of where the problem. And then in Galileo, of course, provoked controversy, so that wasn't really good. The church, the Pope didn't want to have.
It has to be said that
but
he possibly wasn't too diplomatic, in the way that
correct.
I mentioned Butayeb a moment ago.
With
the dialogue of the two world systems appeared to be putting the Pope's view as simplicicus, the simplicity
Yeah.
man. You know,
But
and
if
But
you don't,
there's the other side of the coin with Galileo that you have to appreciate was a lot of the stuff that he said was nonsense and we don't believe anymore. And so what they do is they filter the stuff that turned out to be nonsense and tell you about it in the history books and kind of ignore the nonsense
yeah,
that he claimed to be true.
yeah.
And so that's a selective effect as well. So
But
yeah,
I think when you're starting off, you've got speculations. You got, oh, it could be that question mark and this and that question mark. I mean, the basic idea was that the existing science physics of Aristotle was wrong, and you had to investigate to find out what the alternative would be. I mean, it
well,
wasn't
the
until
important thing is that you can ventilate these views. I mean,
yeah,
you said, Roger, at the beginning of the session when you started that there's no free speech in Britain or maybe
yeah,
anywhere now. So that's the basis. You need to be able to air views,
I know,
whether they're erroneous
but
or
you
not.
can
Error has rights as much as
I know
monarchy.
the problem is you can say something and somebody gets offended, then they report you, and then the thought police come along and arrest you in the early hours of the morning, and you're not really sure what you're allowed to say anymore. There's certain
yeah,
things
this
you,
has apparently become a problem in
yeah,
Canada and
yeah,
Britain. I'm not so sure about, but anyway, we got like 6 minutes here.
yeah.
Um,
There was an Irish comedian. They said, and the police, kind of like a SWAT team, came and arrested him. I think something like the airport or somewhere, and they
yeah, I
jumped him off.
remember that incident. Yeah.
He said, "What did I say? What did I say?" So
Yeah.
then they make a big fuss about something like that, and then the shoplifting and everything is all chaos now. There's lots of crimes going on, and they're just ignoring it. But it's what you say is the important thing. And
Well,
what,
you might be giving them ideas to
yeah,
focus now on science because up to now it's all about gender or politics or
yeah,
whatever, slavery or something. But if they say, okay, we're going to stop the dissidents because you are antagonistic to mainstream people and you're insulting
yeah,
them and so on and so forth, they could start a new persecution and close down the CNPS, for example, if they wanted to.
exactly. They can do that. It's sort of like if they don't like something, it's suddenly somebody bring out a proposal to shut something down. I mean, what was it? Was it Palestine Action Group? They decided to label that a terrorist group. So anybody who's going around saying, "Oh, Palestine Action," oh, you're a terrorist and you get arrested. You could do the same with CMPS. Anybody who's a member of CMPS, arrest them as a terrorist. But it's sort of like, how do they make up their mind as to whether a group's a terrorist? It's just arbitrarily the politicians get up, say something, and they decide to have a go at somebody or other. It's all just made up. You don't know what's supposed to. You don't know what the precise rules are of what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. They just make it up as they go along.
But the
Okay.
modern view is that if a person says he's insulted, there's no more question. You're not allowed to say, well, I was just, no, he's insulted, so
Yeah.
you must stop. So if they brought in some system to say that if you question orthodox science,
Hmm.
well, you're insulting these orthodox scientists,
Exactly.
and you
Exactly.
better stop it.
That's exactly the
Well,
thing. They could,
that already exists, Ian.
yeah, they could say that.
And when people who are questioning the climate change hoax,
Yeah.
the climate change hoax, if you question that, then you're suppressed. And there's the what has happened here in the United States is that the guy at Penn State who came up with a hockey stick, he was suing people for um, being quote science deniers,
Yeah.
and it turned out that he then they sued him, and then he got embarrassed because he couldn't produce any evidence in court that what he said was correct, and that's become a problem for the climate change people because it turns out their science isn't really science, it's pseudoscience. And then that gets you to the question of what's pseudoscience? Well, it pretends to be science, but it's not really.
Mhm. And I think with the climate change, what they call it climate gate, it's hoax. Some people will say that it's not happening, and then the people who say that it's happening say, well, all the scientists say that that it is happening, and then you could try to then you come out, so oh, this scientist is not saying it. Then suddenly they blackball him and say no, he's no longer a scientist. So it's all kind of like, oh, they're prejudicing thing to their point of view all the time.
Can I some of them in private conversation with me have admitted that we don't really know. It's very uncertain. But they said the consequences of, if we are right, where we're alarmists, we say the world is going to be blown up.
Yeah.
You know, if we're right, millions of people are going to be killed. So, and you'll be responsible for that. So you better go along with our way of thinking.
Yeah.
Just to be conscious.
Can I interject there or react to that?
We have 2 minutes.
I apologize. I do not have my cam set up yet. Working on it. Thank you for letting me be here. I feel in good company. Climate change is one of the things that I do not like to talk about, but I like to talk about it in the sense that I'm probably one of the biggest dissidents in that arena ever since it started. My background is environmental chemistry, so I know a little bit about the topic when I studied, and I'm 53 now, so it's a while ago. Everything I hear is correct. It is a hoax. It is not a man-made thing. If you do the numbers, there's a very, very little extra molecules in the air, CO2, that allegedly cause all this so-called warming. It's nonsense. Could humanity increase the CO2 level by industrial productivity? Perhaps, but we would have to crunch the numbers, but regardless, the influence would be super low. CO2 is allegedly a greenhouse gas because it retains the heat a little bit longer than other molecules in the air. That's it. So you get a little bit of retaining of heat. Therefore, the maximum temperature increases a little bit in a system. That is it. If you look at the components in the air, CO2 is 0.04% or so. Water vapor, 1 to 2%. Water vapor is many hundreds of times stronger greenhouse, meaning retaining heat, than CO2. Water is 99% of the alleged global greenhouse effect, not the CO2. The whole story is a hoax. Then comes other stuff. We're going to
be cut off here in a minute.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So the problem is, real information about climatology is not accepted and talked about because it's always bombarded as BS or fringe or crazy people. And only the official narrative that is allowed is being pushed forward. I've seen that for the past 2 decades. There is a natural variation, which is poorly understood when properly
aircraft, or that's a commercial craft, or that's Venus, or that's swamp gas, or whatever. You can come up with all these explanations that people like, and then sort of like, so say 5% is unknowns. You don't know what it was. And I think
and perhaps there's some new scientific phenomenon that is not within our ken. And we might discover that later and find that was the explanation for the 5% all along.
You got 5%.
I'm just asking you to be cautious. You know,
if you follow the recent UFO things, these fighter pilots have both been able to film UFOs, and that's been leaked out. And they're seeing what can only be craft of some kind, whether they're remote controlled drones or whatever. These fighter pilots are filming these strange craft flying around, which don't seem to be human-made craft.
Just to go off on a bit of a tangent here, but it may help. You know that one of the most rational and logical, I'd even call them scientific men of all times, was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And I don't know if you know about this question of his being taken in by the fairies.
Yeah.
You know this business, the cotton fairies thing.
Yeah, I know.
And they did analysis with the Kodak filming system,
yeah,
100 something years ago, and they found there was no possibility it was a hoax. They were genuine, and he was taken in by this. He wrote a book on it, and so on. Now, in more recent years, I read an article in Scientific American, actually, about 40 years ago, which showed that by enhanced modern photographic means, they showed there were strings hanging up these fairies.
Hmm.
So it was all a hoax. And this man was taken in.
I think one of the photographs they weren't able to prove was a hoax, and the girls did admit to that they were all mock-ups of what they've seen, except for one of them, which was real. So the story just keeps going on and on with that. But in the case of Arthur Conan Doyle, he wasn't Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes was a fictional character and wasn't what Arthur Conan Doyle was. Arthur Conan Doyle believed in all that sort of spiritual stuff anyway. So it was only just confirming his bias. He wanted to believe. Well, main reason they're pointing out he wanted to believe because his son had died, I think it was. So he wanted to believe in spiritualism. So he wasn't going by the Sherlock Holmes thing of trying to make everything rational. He was biased already towards the supernatural. So when you're talking about
And I suppose
trying
there
to
were
go
other
for a
scientists
reasonable
who also were
explanation
biased.
first,
Good point.
he was never doing that. He was never going for the reasonable. He was already biased towards the supernatural.
People like Sir Oliver Lodge.
But going back to the UFOs, some of them they can't explain, and some of the new ones, which are coming from fighter pilots, they're sort of like really weird. They must be some craft or some other, and if they're not human, they must be alien. So you're getting all this sort of evidence coming out. When it comes to proof, it needs something like the alien to come down and get out and wave, and people can then take photographs of him. But what you're getting is these strange things flying around in the sky which you're too far away from.
I don't know, Harry, if I may just bring a slight personal note in. Do you remember that we used to participate in Glenn Baxter's groups?
Right.
And I don't know if you ever had conversations with him. I suspect you may have. I had a number of conversations with him. He was totally convinced that aliens had landed in the lake near his area. And I found it quite, he was a very rational man and dissident scientist, very open mind, but he was quite convinced of this. And he would actually get a little upset if you questioned the possibility that.
I've talked to him about this on I know of at least one occasion, and I think I got on his bad side because I was highly skeptical of what he was saying. I don't know. I think this falls into the area of what is science and what is pseudoscience. And the problem that I see is that we've sort of allowed pseudoscience to become mainstream science. One of the best examples, I think, is special relativity and the whole relativity thing. I think that's pseudoscience. I don't think that's really science. And how did that get in to become called science? And
it was supposed to have been confirmed by what Eddington did in 1919, but it was never a proper debate upon the subject.
Well,
the scientists were just told to accept it.
As I mentioned in my presentation several weeks ago, it's these experimental evidence of general relativity is not really all that super well established. I mean, there are people who claim that it's not true. They have counterexamples and they just ignore the counterexamples.
Exactly.
But this whole idea that time is relative and changes and does all these different things, I think that's pseudoscience. That whole aspect of time being relative, I think is just pseudoscience.
Well, that's strange that you mentioned that, sir, because sometimes I like to indulge myself into science fiction-like series and movies and whatnot. There's something appealing to it, humans engaging with other species. Whether it's true or not, I really can't say. But all those series educate me fully about relativity, time travel, quantum mechanics, quantum cores, quantum drives, quantum guns. I mean, quantum mechanics and relativity are completely filling this whole genre and more than just that genre. I'm not even sure exactly, but I'm trying to bring a point across. That means most people actually have been infected with that knowledge, that this is the truth, this is where we are, and it's a kind of a sci-fi promise that we are going to get there.
Well, you mean
And
things
Mike
like
Gordon,
Is anybody here familiar with the astronomer, I think from the Danish astronomer, a lady named Beatrix Villa-Roel, who examined images of the sky um, before any satellites were put up and noticed vanishing objects. In other words,
yeah, we were just talking about that earlier.
Yeah,
oh,
I
so
didn't.
sorry, my electricity
I
was
think
out
I was referring to that
and
information.
I missed that. I'm sorry.
I think I was referring to that information. There's quite a bit on this on the internet about these so-say stars which have disappeared. They've had
And there's
photograph.
even more recent videos on YouTube
Yeah,
about vanishing light sources
yeah,
in the sky as if this phenomena is continuing.
yeah,
In other words, you apparently some source has, well, when it vanishes, let's assume it's a real physical object illuminating and has moved.
yeah. There's a lot of things we don't know really. We're still investigating, but mainstream science is already biased and already wants a certain type of answer to fit in with what they already believe.
Yes,
but my concern, a bit of a Cassandra, I must concede, is that at the moment, one can say, oh, there's a pseudoscience which is talking about time being relative and God knows what, and warps and space,
Yeah,
time, and all that sort of thing. But I can foresee this as a bit of a Cassandra, that it's not a very big step for them to say, look, all of our modern technology is based on all these ideas, all these
yeah,
relativistic and quantum effects, and it's feeding millions of people every day because it's making our world more competitive and produce the food and technology and so on. And anybody who doubts these theories is a terrorist and must be shut up, either by imprisoning him or by other means. So that, according to the modern thinking about suppressing any dissent, I
hmm
think there is a danger that it's going from, mere ridicule to maybe losing your money and losing your job
But
to
we already had this in with
persecution.
the COVID thing.
Yes, that's a good example, I dare say. Yes.
I
and
mean,
it's
they
often
were,
said, and it's often said that retired people may have more liberty in expressing dissident opinions because they can't be fired, so to speak. But I think in recent years, the phenomena of debanking people can affect everybody regardless of their age. Like you can't continue to receive your pension check or whatever.
yeah.
God
Yeah,
forbid that.
they can
Yeah.
move on. The existing way they've done it, there was a TV presenter called David Bellamy, and he was a science popularizer, and at the time, was 30 years ago or something, he looked at this climate thing and he said, no, it's not true, and so they sacked him. And that was the way they deal with people who've got unpopular ideas. So they enforce what is a mainstream point of view on people, and it's that biased all the time. And when that enforcement, say with sacking people, is not sufficient, they will then go for other things.
Okay, so what does this mean? Is that this means that they're invoking science, but it's really pseudoscience and
Well,
telling us
well,
it's true because they say so?
We as distance are looking upon things like Einstein's relativity and thinking that's pseudoscience. But from their point of view, they don't look at what they believe is pseudoscience. They say what we believe is pseudoscience. So it's thrown back the other ways, really.
In climate change, it is a known fact that if you really look at the temperature curve and the CO2 curve in the historical records and whatnot, first of all, they do not really correlate. But where they do, it is the temperature that's coming after. The temperature rise comes first, then a CO2 rise.
Yeah.
The
Right.
CO2 comes after the temperature rise because the oceans degas a little bit more. It is a slow effect, apparently of a couple of centuries. I'm not sure there. The point is this. The whole CO2 story is a complete proven lie, but we're simply not allowing the evidence, the proof, and whatnot. And the whole story is turned around. This is a known fact. I've learned it in my educational days. And to this day, people keep telling it the other way around. So, yeah, what can one do? It's just the lie that's perpetrated, that's all.
If you're a scientist and you say you believe in climate change, then that gives you funding. But if you're saying you're opposed to it in your research, then that's likely to stop you getting funded. So all the money is going in one direction all the time.
So the issue is what is the difference between science and pseudoscience? Just what people tell us is true because they say so, or, to me, there's no real difference.
If you want to look at Karl Popper, he says that science is refutable and pseudoscience, you can't refute it. So that's a possible criterion.
Yeah.
There are other philosophers and they're saying different things.
Basically, what Robert just said is sort of equivalent, I think, to whether or not the scientific method is utilized or not.
Yeah. If you don't take anything as evidence against a theory, then you made it non-refutable.
The way it is used these days is actually pseudoscience, meaning they are quacks. They don't know what they're doing. They are really clued into actual knowledge and educated people. Hence, they are wrong. That is the actual charge that the whole pseudoscience carries. You shouldn't believe them.
Yeah, that's kind of insulating themselves from. To me, pseudoscience is that you use what appears to be the scientific method to argue that what you're saying is true, which I think Einstein is a pretty good example of, and that's why I think relativity is pseudoscience. You cherry pick your experiments and then you say it's correct because your experiments say so, but then there's other experiments that don't seem to agree with it, but you can ignore them. So,
well, I wrote a book about the structured atom model, and I started the book with logic in the trivium quadrivium. So grammar, you start with the observations, right? Then you do your next thing, you make the connections, and then you do your rhetoric, your whole story. So the second step is the actual logic connections. That is the proper way to go. You start with observations, then you do your logic, and then you have your rhetoric in explaining the story. That is a progression, if you will. That is the normal way to go. That is how we are hardwired. The whole mainstream body, as you pointed out, is actually following what you define as a pseudoscience approach. And this is true because we start with the answer. We already know the answer. We already start with the rhetoric. Well, the universe started with Big Bang. Then comes the logic. The universe is expanding. And then comes the observation. Oh, there it is, redshift. See, got it. I was right. But I proved myself to be right from a presumption. Science doesn't start like that. Science does observations, as pointed out in this group many times. So the whole mainstream body is in error, but of course they will never acknowledge that. That's all.
So they're practicing pseudoscience is my claim. It's pseudoscience.
So when we say that
when
we say that change will never occur, I think we might acknowledge that the economics of the question, when it's no longer profitable to individuals to follow a certain course, they'll tend to drop that and seek another course, and so you have to follow the money.
Yeah, well, the money. Yeah, well, yeah. I do want to point out here. I've been looking at this guy Julian Barbour, and he kind of showed up on a couple of videos. There's also Carlo Rovelli is another one, and these people are claiming time doesn't exist. which, you know, these are mainstream people
Yeah.
and they're claiming time doesn't exist. And to me, that just sounds like science fiction.
Well, you can quote Einstein for believing that. There's things Einstein
Well,
said.
that's where the origin of it comes from, because you know, the
So it's
whole
respectable.
right. So the whole so Einstein comes along with special relativity and then general relativity, and then now these very respected high-level physicists are saying time doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Okay, but to me, it's pseudoscience.
Well, it's supposed to be emergent from something else, isn't it?
It's science fiction. It's
Yeah.
pseudoscience.
Well,
It's,
in Einstein's relativity, you can start bringing out science fiction about time travel, and that's very popular with the general public. That's why.
yeah, Ito made this point earlier, as I recall.
Yeah. So it's what Einstein says is very popular. The ideas of time travel and so forth. It catches the imagination.
It's pseudoscience. It's just not real. Okay.
It's what captures the general public's imagination, and they like certain ideas. So he's gone. Yeah. So Einstein's messes up. Part of it for Einstein is he came up with all these thought experiments, and so it wasn't going by really from actual observations. It's coming up from Einstein's imagination about him imagining things about, well, what happened if I was traveling at the speed of light? Would I be able to see my face in the mirror? So it all came from Einstein's thought experiments, his theorizing. And they found that good. And the mainstream liked that, and they said, "Oh, it fits in with the actual experiments." So it was all popular.
This complete alliance between science and the political system, the whole milieu of existence, and so on. I don't say it's new. I mean, we have seen examples of that. We talked about Galileo earlier, but it seems to be so pervasive now. It's one basic unit, and if you're part of this politico quasi-scientific establishment, you've made it. You're on the right track.
Yeah.
And if you're not, you're in trouble. And I can foresee more troubles coming for people who think independently. The scientists, if you like, have betrayed the resolve to follow the scientific method, and they've been traitors, if you like. They've just given in to what is politically expedient. And there's a consensus now in all areas of
they give in because it's their funding, isn't it? They rely on income, and so that they go with what they have to say to get funded.
I could name a name, but I've seen so many. I could not name a name, but I've seen so many people, especially in the climate arena, people with real careers that ran into problems. And it's not just there. As I think Ian pointed out, I fully concur, sir. I think your conclusion and my conclusion are more or less the same. I don't know what to do about it, but this is just, my observation where I start always. That's all.
Well, as to bring it back to the discussion that we're having now, the question is the Santilli telescope and these pictures that we're talking about. Are we talking about pseudoscience or science, or is it real, or is it science fiction, or
has the electric universe been brought up in this discussion?
Yeah, that's
part of it.
That seems to be a bit more scientific, if you want to use that term. But I'm wondering about the Santilli thing, because his idea seems to be that there's a different sort of. He has a theory that goes back that has this antimatter idea, this antimatter that's not antimatter. Is that real, or what? That's kind of what the issue is.
If the discussion is about disappearing objects, then I would throw in the electric universe as a thing to look at, because they claim that the stars function in a very different manner than the normally accepted explanation. That is, let alone antimatter.
This would be what Santilli is saying, that our understanding of electromagnetism light has been wrong. We haven't got a full picture of it. And with the antimatter. If you go back to Paul Dirac, I think, was saying that antimatter had negative mass. It's just when the mainstream has gone along and done their experiments, they've decided what they're getting is positive mass for antimatter. So they changed from what the original idea of antimatter was.
Right.
And that's
I'm
part
so
of what's...
sorry. I should have introduced myself again. I do not believe, it is my conviction, I'm working on the structured atom model and a complete revision of the whole nucleus and everything that comes with it, meaning the whole fundaments. And I wish to talk to you guys in the future much more about that. The point is, I really don't believe in antimatter or negative mass. The whole thing Dirac did was let an electron travel back in the time, in a reaction formula, that is.
Well, the trouble is that is the mainstream say they've done experiments and they've got something where they've observed things in those experiments which they're calling antimatter. So you've got the problem there that there is something going on which is they've given a name to. So if it's not Paul Dirac's version of antimatter or anybody else's version of antimatter, and there's something else, you've still got something going on which they are claiming to observe.
Yeah, but if you stick into the mainstream explanations, quantum mechanics and whatnot, then you're never going to understand it. And I really hope to change that. And I know I'm being awfully arrogant here, and I'm not going to do that alone, obviously. But I do have something to start with.
Well, you're bringing the idea. Go ahead. We have 8 minutes.
Well, go with quantum mechanics, quantum physics. Once again, the mainstream are claiming that they've got experiments which conform to what quantum mechanics is talking about. So you've got observations, and then they got their claim of what the theory is that goes with it. So if you're saying the theory is wrong, you've still got the observations that you got to explain, even if it's by a different theory.
But what if another theory or another model, let's put it that way, another explanation, would be at least, or perhaps better, in giving us a logical story that also can deal with those explanations, or perhaps even better. Think maybe we can resolve things.
Well, it's not the way that science, it's not the way physics is going on. That they've come up with their quantum physics and their Einstein's relativity, and they say it fits observations,
they say,
and experiments and so forth, and they're then looking for it building up on top of that, and they're still looking at trying how to combine relativity with quantum physics, but they're saying that the observations, experiments they're doing fit in with those ideas, and so they're then looking for some experiment or something observation which would then unify those things together, and they're building upon that. They're not actually looking for alternative theories to that.
Right. No, but that's that. I'm not trying to change their mind, sir, because I'm fully aware that I never will.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do something else, and I'm trying to find other people that are like-minded, and I think this group is a good example of that. At least from what I hear so far, I think I'm in good company.
Yeah.
But and I'm not trying to be boastful here or anything. I work from the structured atom model, and perhaps, if I may be very bold, I don't know who leads this little gathering, but the suggestion was made that I do a presentation so we can offer you gentlemen all a little bit more insight where I come from. Is that a good way? How do I get in touch with you guys, please, about that?
Okay. Let me ask some other questions here. Do I have your correct email? I sent you an email and asked you to respond to make sure that I had the correct email. I never got a response. So apparently,
then we may have an email issue there. I have not seen it.
Okay, so
give me a sec. I need to check my. Maybe it's in the spam, right?
Yeah, that may be where it is. But this was like a week or two ago. I'm not sure it was after you. Well, last week was the first week you joined us. Yes, so it would have been probably Sunday or Monday. Anyway, the point is that's an issue. Ian, do you have his email?
I'm not sure now. I may have it on the list, Harry. But
let me type it in the chat again.
I guess the real question is, in the email that I have, there's like Edwin Call, and
Yeah.
it's 00. Okay, I wrote down 3 zeros instead of 2 zeros.
Ah, okay. Now that'll be probably then the reason is 00.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, so that explains it. So it's Edwin Call 00. These are number zeros. They're not
Yes,
odes.
yes. Number
Number
0.
zeros.
Yes.
That was another point that I confused. And okay, at gmail.com, right? Show me to it again.
What you just said, sir, is entirely correct. Edwin Kaal 00@gmail.com.
Okay, all right, all right. Okay,
Well, Edwin, are you familiar with
Ido, please. Ido, please.
Ido? Okay, I wasn't sure if that was just a nickname, but okay, Ido. Are you familiar with our formats? So obviously these cosmology sessions, which Harry convenes every Sunday. Now we also have these Saturday meetings, which might be a bit more of a formal presentation, followed by questions and answers. Have you seen any of those? I convene them every second Saturday, and the intermediate ones, Roger gives his own talk.
This is my suggestion, sir. I think your question is excellent, and I have been thinking about it a little bit. I don't know exactly what is what, so it's hard for me to choose. I think your opinion would be much more appreciated here, but perhaps we can communicate via Discord or something about this topic separately, so that I don't use up all your meeting time here. That would be my preference, and we can go from there. So we just have a chat about that, so I can try to help you out, and you can help me out there, so we can make it happen.
Yeah. And they're not mutually exclusive. You could, in the process of time, give us two
Yeah,
presentations.
or both, or whatever, or whenever. That's exactly the stuff that I would like to talk to you about, so I can explain to you a little bit more where I come from, and so you can make a right judgment there, please.
Okay, sounds
So
good.
please contact me on Discord or something, or email at the very least, so we can make a separate connection. Then I can stop stealing this time here.
You're not stealing
okay,
it.
well,
I do apologize, gentlemen. I feel very
all
humbled.
right. Well, we've got some interesting information. So we only got a few minutes left. 2 minutes. Does anybody have any final comments? And I want to thank Roger for talking to us this morning about what he's been up to, and appreciate everybody coming by.
Okay, thank you. So a conclusion is that I am getting something weird when I use these concave lenses, contrast it to convex lenses. So these two people, Santilli and Dr. X, are onto something.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Does what you get depend upon rotating the lens? In other words, to sort of try to eliminate some defect in the lens itself? Roger?
No, it doesn't. I've had enough troubles at the moment with setting things up. I am getting of strange photographs, and I need to investigate it further.
Okay, rotating the lenses might be interesting.
But I'm taking lots of photographs, and things are turning up in some photographs and not other photographs when I'm doing with the Santilli telescope. So there's something going on. It's not in the lens. Okay. Thank you.
All right, we're going to get cut off here. All right, thank you. I do not have anything for next week. So if anybody's interested in giving a presentation or leading the discussion next week, that'd be great. Otherwise, I'm going to talk about some of this crazy
This week's VTV Spotlight features Thunder Energies with the world's first telescope to see galaxy antimatter. Antimatter could pose a global threat because it reacts explosively on contact with matter. Just half a gram of antimatter would be the equivalent of an atomic bomb.
The revolutionary Santilli telescope enables the astronomer for the first time to be able to detect antimatter.
Refractive telescopes have convex lenses, and our telescopes are the only one available with concave lenses for the first detection of antimatter galaxies.
We have working prototypes. Thunder Energies is ready to bring our telescope to market. We're dedicated to bringing tomorrow's technology into being today by producing the world's first telescope capable of detecting antimatter.
Go online for the full interview.
Years I've made a few videos about this somewhat unusual mystery, the mystery of disappearing or vanishing stars. And though you can find all of these videos in the description below, in a nutshell, they all discussed a very similar concept: unusual disappearance of stars that used to be visible with older telescopes, with some examples being very extreme. Like here we have an unusual constellation of 3 stars disappearing in under an hour. And as you can imagine, naturally, these first discoveries created a bit of a mystery, or actually a really big mystery, a mystery of disappearing stars. And to date, over 1,000 such stars have been discovered, with all of them disappearing in the last few decades. In most cases, they were basically visible by some of the earlier advanced telescopes in the 50s and in the 60s, and could then be no longer visible in the telescopes today. And so, hello, person, this is Anton. Today we're going to discuss this mystery once again, and potentially discuss one of the major resolutions or one of the major solutions. And though this might not explain all of the stars, it will definitely explain at least some of these disappearing objects. Although here it's also important to note that this is not the first such explanation. Not so long ago we've discussed another star that also disappeared in 2015, but it was then explained by the James Webb, with the video in the description talking about this a little bit more. In a nutshell though, this was just an unusual type of a supernova that did produce certain emissions, we just could not see them in certain frequencies. But because over 1,000 such objects have now been discovered, this is probably one of the most intriguing mysteries in the Milky Way. So what exactly is happening here? And more specifically, how can an entire constellation disappear like this? Not surprisingly, when this was initially announced,
Think you're getting your kid a smartphone.
one of the first more unusual explanations involved Dyson spheres. And so basically here, maybe we're witnessing some kind of an advanced civilization suddenly covering the stars in order to use them as a major energy source. But these explanations were pretty quickly disregarded for one important reason. By design, Dyson spheres should still be emitting certain frequencies, especially infrared light. And this infrared light should be visible with telescopes like, for example, the James Webb. But the locations of these disappearing stars were not producing infrared light either, and were actually not producing anything. And so if not Dyson spheres, maybe the explanations here were much more mundane, with some studies suggesting that maybe this was just basically a problem with the telescope, and specifically maybe this was just accumulation of dust or some kind of an artifact inside the lens. And though this might make sense for some of these observations that were only conducted once, there were a few stars that were observed by separate telescopes and were missing in all of them. And so this was not a universal explanation either. But the majority of scientists, and I guess